One myth, or rather lie, that has already been partially debunked in the first part of the series, is that the ideology of communism was noble, but its implementation was bad. But if this is really true, why was it bad everywhere in the world where it was implemented? If the idea is good, then it should have worked somewhere, but the fact that it ended in disaster everywhere even from the very beginning is clear evidence that this ideology was corrupt, evil, and flawed even in principle. Another theory, less popular today, is that the practice of communism was right in its beginnings, but became evil under Stalin. Aside from the fact that the Bolshevik regime was bloodthirsty from day one, culminating in the Civil War and the Red Terror, the question is what kind of ideology and system allows a homeless bandit to be given absolute power and commit such destruction? The system not only attracted but also produced psychopaths. In Stalin's case, it started even before the Bolshevik takeover, in his childhood, which was extremely traumatized. As an adult, he never lived a life that was anything close to normal. He was a gangster, a robber, a political exile, and in the new system, Lenin made him do the dirty work. His private life was also a disaster. With such a life, anyone can easily come to the conclusion that only the most brutal can survive and deserve to survive. You have to be tough with the world, because the world is tough with you. And this attitude simultaneously attracted, and manufactured antisocial minds in large scale, in the system that was called ironically socialism. Some quotes attest that the regime was already evil to its core, even before Stalin, and there was nothing noble in the views of the ideology's advocates. In his letter to the members of the Politburo on March 19, 1922, Lenin explained with his characteristic cynicism how a deadly blow could be dealt to the enemy under the pretext of famine. Quote, "We have a 99% chance of achieving complete success, of dealing a fatal blow to the enemy, and of placing ourselves in a favorable position for decades that is vital to us. So many starving people are feeding on human flesh, our country is covered with hundreds and thousands of corpses, now and only now can we, and therefore must, confiscate church property with ruthless, savage force. We must grab the treasure of hundreds of millions of gold rubles at any cost. Everything indicates that, we will not be able to achieve our goal another time, because even the despair born of famine may bring with it a benevolent, or at least neutral, attitude towards us from the masses. That is why I come to the firm conclusion that we must trample the Black Hundred's clergy as hard and mercilessly as possible, but so brutally that they will be remembered for decades." End of quote. Lenin made the following proposal to discredit the Anti-Hunger Committee, which consisted of Russian intellectuals and foreign aid organizations. Quote, "Let's give the newspapers an order to start slandering the members of the committee tomorrow. They are elitist youngsters, white Guardists, who like to travel abroad, but they hardly go to the countryside. They must be ridiculed in every way, and the wet sheet must be pulled over them at least once a week for 2 months." End of quote. As a logical consequence of his view of human nature, Trotsky believes that people must be forced to work, using compulsion. Quote, "From the gentle to the extremely severe, history is bringing us, along the whole line, to our fundamental problem, the organization of labor on new social foundations. The organization of labor is in its essence the organization of the new society. Every historical form of society is in its foundation a form of organization of labor. While every previous form of society was an organization of labor in the interests of a minority, which organized its state apparatus for the oppression of the overwhelming majority of the workers, we are making the first attempt in world history to organize labor in the interests of the laboring majority itself. This, however, does not exclude the element of compulsion in all its forms, both the most gentle and the extremely severe. The element of state compulsion not only does not disappear from the historical arena, but on the contrary will still play, for a considerable period, an extremely prominent part." End of quote. Quotes prove that Karl Marx also supported revolutionary terror as a means of government. Quote, "We have no compassion and we ask no compassion from you. When our turn comes, we shall not make excuses for the terror. End of quote. After all this and taking all this into account, the brutally simple answer to why the ideology of communism did not work in practice is because it did not work in theory, and in theory it did not work because its implementation required the most ruthless terror. We humans are not designed to work, this is why it is sacrifice from our part, but we shall make sacrifice, because we have a free will, and we expect reward in return for our work, what Marxists only contemptuously call exploitation. The whole concept of communism contradicts the genetically determinated human nature. The Bolsheviks recognized this is why they introduced the so-called re-education camps to reprogram the Homo sapiens. Re-education camps were introduced only by regimes which were collectivists to their core. Sadly, the ideology did not take into account the basic nature of power, because it ignores the basic human nature itself. Relative power corrupts relatively, absolute power corrupts absolutely, because the human is a selfish and not an altruistic being. What would require to make communism work? If you want to make an omelette, you have to break a few eggs, was the ominous slogan, in the name of which entire generations of people were sacrificed in the promise of a better world. The answer to this may be, I have seen many broken eggs, but I have not eaten an omelette. And the most tragic consequence of world communism is that the maximum sacrifice that was required for its functioning proved to be meaningless, and never paid off.